So I will call the meeting to order. I can see from the attendance, myself, Tim Del Giudice, Mr. Duffy, Ms. Green, Senator Izzo, Ms. Monty are present. I know Chair Cottom is trying very hard to get in, and Mr. Mello is going to be a few minutes late, but will be joining us.
I'm here, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I'm in the middle of a business meeting. I'm here now. Sorry.
Lynn, if you could call Barbara, it looks like she might have an old link. She's showing me a link to a December 10th meeting. As opposed, she's in tomorrow, so she's in tomorrow's meeting.
Okay.
She's in the email from Angela for tomorrow's meeting. She's not in the email for you for tonight's meeting.
I will resend the invitation for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. So that's what the problem is. So she'll figure that out in a moment. All right. So again, sorry about the technical difficulties here. We're still working these issues as we come through the Zoom world. So this is our December 9th Council on Post-Secondary Education meeting, primarily focused on budgets this evening. Also, in addition to the council members who I've already recognized, we have Acting Commissioner Ron Cavallaro, President Sanchez, President Hughes, and staff from both institutions and the Commissioner's office all online tonight as participants. And again, for all the staff, please jump right in when you need to so we can keep the meeting going. A quorum is present, and at some point during this meeting, the council may seek to go into executive session. At that time, Lynn, our able staff leader, will put all of the non-participants into the waiting room. We'll go about our executive session. And then when that's completed, we'll bring everybody back from the waiting room back into the public webinar forum at that point. Moving on to our agenda. First item is acceptance of the agenda from our December 9th meeting. May I have a motion that the council accepts the agenda as agended?
So moved.
Motion made by Senator Izzo, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Monty. Thank you. The agenda stands approved.
No, Tim, vote.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Ron. Next is the minutes from the October 21st meeting. Again, they were presented in the read ahead, as was all of the other material for this meeting. May I have a motion that the council accepts the minutes for the meeting that took place on October 21st as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Duffy, thank you. Seconded by
Mello.
Mr. Mello. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Stands passed. Thank you. Next is the open forum. We'll wait for Barbara Cottom to join for the open forum. I think it's getting close. I will just note for folks who are participating in the open forum that we do have 3 people that have registered for the forum. And we will call upon each of them individually. Each one will be afforded a 3-minute opportunity to speak before the council. I ask that those participants keep their comments to those 3 minutes so that we can abide by the council bylaws. So before we start that part, I'm just going to pause for 1 moment. Lynn, have you connected with Chair Cottom?
He's on.
Yes, I moved her into the meeting.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. The big green bar. There we go. So Chair Cottom, we're all here. Very good. So Barb, we've already started with the minutes and the agenda have been approved. We're about to start the open forum we held for you, being open forums these days. First up is Mr. Christensen. Eric Christensen, are you on the line, please? Mr. Christensen is a professor of history at Rhode Island and president of the Rhode Island College AFT Union. Lynn, if you could bring Mr. Christensen in, please.
He is on the panelist list. If I may ask Chairwoman Cottom, if you could mute, please. We're getting a little bit of feedback. Thank you.
All right. Should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Post-Secondary Council. I appreciate the time. Tonight, you're considering Rick's proposed budget for FY22, as you know, and this budget offers an opportunity for a realistic and responsible approach to funding the college. Rick's state appropriation has dropped considerably over the past 2 decades, taking a huge hit after the 2008 crash, from which it's never recovered. For a time, in the wake of the Great Recession, due to extremely high unemployment rates, combined with stagnant salaries for administrators, staff, and faculty, and a long-standing FTE cap, covered up for the decline in state funding. But that was a short-term situation that should never have been thought of as a realistic model for funding public higher ed. One of your statutory duties is to create and maintain a 5-year plan for public higher ed funding in Rhode Island. That kind of strategic framework is essential if we're going to move much beyond reactive budgets. Among other things, as you know, the multi-year contracts that you negotiate with the various labor unions require at least midterm thinking that is not possible with only 1-year budget plans. And the institutions can't come up with realistic strategic visions for their futures when there's no support for their budgets beyond the next fiscal year. There must be a renewed effort to create and advocate for long-term budget strategies. In addition to those 5-year plans, in 2016, a new statute required the OPC to create performance funding metrics in cooperation with the 3 institutions, and also to create a separate funding formula that would be used to standardize public higher ed funding from the state. I was part of the working group convened by Commissioner Purcell and then reconvened by Commissioner Dan Messier that worked to develop both the metrics and the funding formula. I'm disappointed that this effort at a more rational budget process has apparently lost momentum and support. In the absence of such mechanisms, the college is moving forward with its own plans to strategize and to rationalize its budgets, even during this pandemic. We have an opportunity now to take a big step forward with this FY22 budget proposal, which has incorporated substantial savings and modest increases in appropriation and in tuition. A 5% tuition increase is, of course, not anyone's first choice, and we still need the increased state appropriation, but the fact is that Rick's tuition is low and has not kept pace with the long-term decline in state funding. Unless there's a concerted campaign to restore the much greater state allocations of yesteryear, there really is no choice but to increase tuition. And thankfully, with the financial aid that most Rick students receive, the individual impact of a 5% increase will be minimal. I appreciate your support. I hope that you will approve, and I hope you will advocate for Rick's FY22 budget. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen. Next up is Michaela Arthur, who's chair of the Department of Sociology at Rhode Island College. Lynn, if you could bring Michaela in, please.
And she is on the screen.
Hi, Michaela.
Hi, sorry. I think I got my technology working there. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. I am here to speak on behalf of our current and former students to urge you to, current and future students, sorry, to urge you to advocate for increased funding for Rhode Island College. As you know, higher education, both locally and nationally, is at an inflection point. One that may have been on the horizon regardless, but that was intensified and accelerated by the devastation that has been wrought by COVID. This inflection point leaves policymakers such as you with a choice. Will we continue to support higher education as an engine of opportunity, social mobility, and economic development? Or will we choose to instead close the doors on a significant proportion of our population, harming our state and its people? The suffering we here in Rhode Island are experiencing is, of course, not unique. Nationally, higher education budgets in both the public and private sectors have been hit very hard. Rhode Island is actually in the top half of states in terms of job losses in public higher education, with an over 10% decline in headcount employees in just the 12 months ending October 2020. The employees we have lost provided vital services to the students who trust us with their futures. Without a robust budget, including both approving the requested tuition increase and boosting state appropriations, our students will suffer. They will suffer from reduced access to academic and personal support staff, reduced availability of institutional financial aid, reduced opportunities to develop their leadership and career skills, and reduced curricular offerings so as to make it hard for them to get the courses they need to proceed to graduation on time. And that's just what's already happening right now in fiscal year 21. The COVID situation has made some of these things unavoidable on a temporary basis, of course, but our students deserve far better going forward. You have the power to help change this story. We here in Rhode Island can be a national leader by ensuring access to high quality bachelor's degrees for Rhode Islanders of all backgrounds. An education that is close to home, affordable, even with the proposed tuition increase, which most of our lowest income students won't pay due to their financial aid packages, and provides the supportive environment that makes great futures possible. Rhode Island College, by providing an affordable and accessible four-year degree, is the true engine of opportunity and mobility in our state, and Rhode Islanders cannot afford to lose that access. As you know, the dollars that we invest in higher education multiply, providing strong benefits for the future of our students, their families, and the entire state. And our students are counting on you to speak for them, to protect and preserve their chance to help build a better future for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikhail. Next, we'll have Vincent Bollinger. Vince is a professor and director of film studies at Rhode Island College and chair of the College Faculty Council.
Thank you. Thanks to Chair Joe Dudas for the opportunity to speak, and thanks to Lynn Owens for facilitating my participation this evening. As was said, I'm a faculty member at RIC and currently serve as the chair of College Council. And I'm speaking today in support of President Sanchez's proposed budget for Rhode Island College. And I ask that you please approve this budget and then advocate in favor of it with the governor and the legislature. I would like to focus in particular on the issue of RIC's tuition. Our low tuition is, without question, one of our more obvious strengths. We are more affordable than most other four-year institutions in the region. Indeed, I direct film studies here at RIC, and we are ranked in the top 10 in the country in terms of affordability, and are certainly the most affordable program in New England. RIC's affordability is part of what helps us secure the #3 ranking in New England for social mobility among public four-year colleges by US News and World Report, which also ranks us in the top 20 of Northeast regional comprehensives and students graduating with the least amount of debt. While this low tuition is certainly a point of pride, I must point out that it gives RIC incredibly lean margins. Lower tuition means that our tuition revenue simply adds up to much less money, with much smaller financial flexibility and financial cushioning than other institutions. RIC has not done what many other institutions across the country have done to grow their budgets by trying to appeal to international and farther afield out-of-state students. Instead, we have remained committed to the state and the immediate region. 85 to 90% of our students are from Rhode Island, and as you know, our graduates stay in Rhode Island, with more than 40,000 alumni living in the state. We here at RIC absolutely are an engine of social mobility and economic vitality for the state. The increasing diversity of our student population shows the present and future demographics of this state, but we cannot support these students if we do not have a sufficient budget. As a result of recent cuts, more than 50 people have been laid off at RIC, with dozens of faculty, staff, and administrative positions left open and or lost. While certainly this is an alarming number in and of itself, I'd just like to remind you that these are our dear colleagues and our dear friends who worked with and alongside us to teach our students and support our students, and they helped to make RIC the high quality and accessible institution that it is. The effectiveness of our institution, the institution overall, is imperiled without greater financial support. So I ask you, council membership, to please advocate for the college to the governor and our legislature. Doing so is in the best interest of the state. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my remarks.
Thank you, Professor. That concludes our open forum. We also should note that we received written testimony this evening on a variety of topics. Those written comments have been received by the office and have been distributed to all of the council members individually. And I'd like to thank those folks who took the time to write to us. Next, we're going to go to reports from the chair. I'm going to reserve mine until we get to the budget portion of tonight's meeting. Chair Cottam, I don't know if you have prepared remarks or not this evening.
I will pass.
Great, thank you for that. Next up is report from the commissioner. Ron, I know you've got a lengthy budget presentation. Anything we need to address prior to that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I just have one notice of a new program or a change that was submitted and reviewed by the office. This is from the Community College of Rhode Island. It is the establishment of a certificate in graphic design. The office staff reviewed the notice. This changes within the approval and scope of the institution, and council approval is not required. It's on just for notice.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. All right, we're going to move to item 6, which is our discussion items and presentations of budgets. So as I mentioned, tonight, Acting Commissioner Cavallaro, President Hughes, President Sanchez will be presenting their FY22 budgets. No one needs to be told that 2020 has been a year like no other. It is, however, worth noting for the record that the state of Rhode Island, like many other states, is yet to approve an FY21 budget. I believe the House Finance Committee is meeting exactly right now, doing that work. But we sit here tonight prepared to hear and approve the FY22 budgets. And we need to continue to move forward doing that in spite of the pandemic, because there are many families and students across the state who are making family decisions and life decisions right now that our work depends on their decision-making, and vice versa. They're depending on hearing from us what their tuitions will be, where they're going to enroll in college, and where they're moving forward to. There have been countless exercises by the Office of Management and Budget, the Department of Administration, the legislature, in different budget scenarios. The institutions and the Commissioner's Office has participated in all those different scenario workups, and we look forward to an FY21 budget being passed sometime, I believe, in the coming days. Also, we've been waiting to hear on the activities coming out of Congress and in Washington for a second COVID relief package. We've seen time and time again, they've introduced a bill, it comes close, and they pull it back time after time. Again, I think actually maybe tonight or tomorrow, there's another COVID bill about to be debated in Washington. I'm hopeful that a package is approved, comes to the state that will avoid devastating deficits at the state level, which will no doubt transfer on to our institutions if that happens. So we're all very hopeful in watching Congress that a stimulus or COVID relief package will be forthcoming. Since this pandemic started, our institutions have withstood millions of dollars in unbudgeted expenses, unpredictable fluctuations in enrollment, and staggering reductions to their revenue. As a result of all of that happening during the pandemic, this council, along with the institution's administrations, have been forced to make very difficult decisions that have included layoffs, contract adjustments, reductions and eliminations of programs, all while at the same time, the institutions with their faculty and staff working tirelessly to move thousands of college students to hybrid and remote and online learning, many for the very first time. I'd like to just pause for a minute and thank all of the administrators, faculty, and staff at both institutions. Incredible work has been done since this thing started back in March. Most folks didn't have training and a lot of how to go do it, and they were building the boat while they were learning how to sail it. And it wasn't without issue at the beginning, but overall it's been a fantastic job, and everybody's to be commended for the learning and the sailing they did with these students in these turbulent waters. As for the FY22 budget, we started this process with that backdrop of the pandemic, the financial crisis it caused, the lack of a state budget for FY21. Again, as we try to inform where we'll be going for FY22. So we do, as we do every year, we looked to the higher education price index, the HIPI. And HIPI is an inflation index designed specifically for use for US colleges and universities, kind of sets a benchmark on what's happening nationally. They look at expenditures and projections, and they come in with a forecast and recommendations. The HIPI was projecting and was recommending that there'd be a 2.2% increase in tuition rates this year across the country. So based on that information, the council, the commissioner's office recommended to both institutions, to CCRI and Rhode Island College, that they build their FY22 operating budgets with a target of 2.5% for their tuition increase and a modest general revenue increase, because there are too many known unknowns with where the state economics were going to be as they move into the FY22 cycle themselves. So again, we understand the General Assembly is meeting in real time, and we've got some insight as to what the FY21 budget might look like. While it's not great, I don't think it's as devastating as we thought it might be coming out of where we were even 2 weeks ago. So we're hopeful that that budget will continue to mature and get passed through the process. But again, back to what we're here for tonight, both institutions will be presenting their budgets. It's my understanding that the community college was able to meet the challenge put out by the council at a 2.5% tuition increase, while Rhode Island College is proposing a 5% increase. I'm looking forward to hearing from Rhode Island College and President Sanchez the justification for the 5% above the recommended 2.5%, and also with the insight that we're gleaning now into FY21 and some of the restored funding. Are you standing by the need for that 5% increase, or will you be able to take a second look at that and drive some of that cost off of the students now that we've got some insight into FY21? Again, it's also important that the council understands, as the state firms up their FY21 budget, as the Congress acts or doesn't act on a CARES Act funding, we might have to come back here and readdress this very budget that we have before us. So I don't want to say that tonight's action is going to be done, because there's still some unknown variables out there that could affect our work. I'm hopeful, again, that we can move forward in a better scenario than we had at the beginning of this year, and that we're able to recover somewhat from some of these hefty cuts that we've all had to experience. A bit of a gloomy backdrop to start off our meeting on. And I would like to introduce President Hughes to come in, and we'll start with CCRI. And I do have to comment, President Hughes, on the ramp and the photograph behind you and your backdrop and how great the college looks. I wish we could all be there right now and have walked up that ramp with you. But I look forward to hearing your budget presentation, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, as do we. So thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Cavallaro, and members of the council for the opportunity to present our FY22 budget and for your continued support of CCRI. This evening, I will recap where we've been and outline our FY22 priorities to provide the context for the budget we present for your consideration. What I will present this evening are two proposals. First, a budget that reflects the true cost of running an institution of our size that serves nearly 45,000 Rhode Islanders annually, and that advances the three pillars of our strategic plan, which you can see before you: enhancing student success and completion, expanding partnerships and programs, and strengthening our institutional effectiveness. I will also present a second budget in line with the request by the State Office of Management and Budget for all state agencies to submit a budget that represents a 15% reduction from the enacted FY20 budget. As you know, and as Chair Del Giudice just outlined, we have needed to create our FY22 budget without knowing what our FY21 budget will be, though we are nearly halfway through fiscal year 21. The Speaker-elect has publicly stated that he anticipates passing the FY22 state budget this month, referring to it as a skinny budget with no new policy initiatives. It remains to be seen what this will mean for CCRI. As you also know, the governor's proposed FY21 budget, submitted 10 months ago, included removing the sunset provision on Rhode Island Promise. Governor Raimondo has gone on the record this fall stating that any budget passed needs to include promise. With this in mind, we proceeded with the assumption that funding for the Promise program will be included. Promise students comprise nearly 1/3 of CCRI's enrollment, and the continuation of this program is vital to the financial health of the college. In addition, it is a policy that is essential to producing a strong, well-educated future workforce and a healthy Rhode Island economy. I will come back to Promise when I discuss our budget request. So I'd like to begin by bringing us back to March 13th of this year, when COVID forced us to transition to remote teaching and working. I'll then proceed to outline our priorities and challenges for the coming year. The pandemic upended our college and created immense pressure that impacted our employees and our students. Before the pandemic, only 13% of our 2,240 sections were being taught online. Just 19% of our faculty had previously taught online, and 48% of our students had taken an online course. Our students needed to learn in a whole new way while also living through the pandemic. Many lost their jobs, while others found themselves working even more hours as essential workers. We heard from nearly 900 students who didn't have access to the very basic technology, a laptop, tablet, or Wi-Fi needed to learn online. Those were challenging days, but our community came together, supported one another, supported our students, and we are a stronger institution because of it. And along the way, we learned a great deal. Today, 95% of our full-time faculty are now trained to teach online. Both our faculty and students feel more comfortable teaching and learning in remote fashion, although our students less so. In a recent survey from this fall, 81% of our faculty responded they had a good or excellent experience teaching in a remote format. Our students, however, shared they are less satisfied with online learning. Only 56% rate their online learning experience as good or excellent. Vice President Costigan and her team are intensely focused on partnering with the faculty to continue to improve online teaching, and we are working hard as a college to better set our students up for successful online learning. In many cases, that means starting at the very beginning, teaching a student how to use Blackboard, how to contact their professors, their tutors, and their advisors. Despite the ongoing teaching and learning challenges, our spring 20 pass rates were nearly identical to those of our spring 2019 spring term. While this is encouraging news, we do not anticipate the same positive outcomes this fall as we achieved last spring. So why is this the case? Last spring, our students were already midway through the term before transitioning to remote learning. And for most of our students, it was at least the second semester being at our college. So in other words, for the majority of our spring students, they weren't brand new to CCRI or to college. In contrast, this fall, we welcome thousands of new students who are navigating college for the very first time. Being a first-time college student brings its own set of challenges, and these students have had to do so wholly online while also living through the pandemic. We anticipate that until our students are able to return to campus, enrollment, grades, retention, and graduation rates will be negatively impacted. In response to the pandemic, our staff have designed new ways, and in many cases more effective ways, to support our students. They were forced to implement quickly, and they succeeded. As an example, through our virtual drop-in sessions for advising, we were able to support up to 250 students each day, something we could not have done face-to-face. These are just examples that you're seeing in front of you of ways the student services team is reaching out to engage our students in order to make them aware of the opportunities for becoming closely involved with the college and staying on track. So the virtual advising students were a one-stop shop for students. And what it means is a student could drop into an all-day online session when it was convenient for them, be connected to an advisor to review their program, and identify the next set of courses to keep them on the path to completion. register for classes, and speak with a financial aid representative. So when you think about what I just outlined, that is typically would be a visit that would otherwise need to take place over several days or several weeks. And by designing a way to do this all online, it becomes much more streamlined, and it makes it more possible for our students to actually accomplish this in a single day. We expect to continue with this model and make it available to our students even when we are back on campus. So the crisis has inspired the college to rapidly innovate in order to achieve critical solutions. While there will, of course, always be a need for face-to-face teaching and student services, and while we are all so eager to return to campus, we will retain many of the innovations created in response to this crisis, as they will allow us to better serve our students going forward. Despite the incredible challenges this college has faced, our community, our faculty, our staff, our administration, everyone responded brilliantly and with tremendous compassion, and I'm very grateful. So now I'd like to take just a couple of minutes to outline the critical student support our foundation board and advancement team, led by AVP Bobby Gondola, have consistently delivered throughout the pandemic. So throughout Bobby's leadership, the college's foundation and alumni association raised $550,000 this summer and awarded $485,000 of that raise in aid to support more than 550 students, including $105,000 for our emergency relief fund. And that went to students who needed assistance with housing, food, healthcare, and other non-education basic expenses. Another $225,000 in comeback scholarships for those students financially impacted by the pandemic and who needed that extra money in order to stay in college and continue with their education. $155,000 in merit-based scholarships and 73 technology awards for students who lacked access to a computer or internet. And that's in addition to the 900 students that we connected earlier in the spring. This is also in addition to the $6.5 million we distributed directly to students through the CARES Act and other college financial support. We are incredibly grateful to everyone who donated and for your continued belief in our college and our students. I want to now briefly highlight key accomplishments that align with our strategic plan. This spring in 2020, we sustained the dramatic improvement in our two-year graduation rate that we first achieved in 2019, achieving again in 2020 an 18% two-year graduation rate. That's a 350% improvement from our historical rate of 4%, and now stands 20% above the national average. This year, we doubled our historic three-year graduation rate from 15% last year to 30% this year. And with this graduating class, FY20, we awarded more diplomas and certificates than in the past 20 years. I've brought these wins to this council before, and I share them here as I hope to underscore just how capable our students are when we provide them with the resources to succeed. I also share them here because it's important to acknowledge that we will require strong, continued state investment in order to sustain our performance improvement trajectory. So now to a brief review of our Division of Workforce Partnerships. Despite the pandemic, revenue from our certificate training and incumbent worker programs grew by 27% in the past year and has nearly tripled since 2016 when we began this work at the college. We continue to strengthen our partnerships with the Rhode Island Department of Commerce and the Rhode Island Department of Labor and Training, as well as our business clients, including the Providence and Newport Chambers of Commerce, the Mortgage Bankers Association, Bank of America, CVS, and others. By listening to our business partners, we are able to quickly build programs to address both their short and long-term needs and create new pipelines of talented workers. In addition, workforce partnerships and academic affairs are collaborating to create new degree programs that closely align with labor market needs. We did this with our very successful cybersecurity degree program, and in September, we will offer a data analytics certificate program. We know this collaborative model between employers, our workforce division, and academic affairs teams is the right model for our college, and look forward to developing additional stackable certificate and degree programs in areas where our business partners tell us there is a need for highly skilled individuals. This model matters because it ensures our students can earn a degree in a field where they will be immediately employable while continuing on to earn their bachelor's degree. Looking ahead, we know the pandemic and the economic fallout will continue to affect our college and our community for some time. This is most pronounced with our enrollment decline. As I have previously shared with this council, our fall enrollment is 13,684 students, 7% down from last fall. Well, that is discouraging, especially after we experienced a gain last fall for the first time since the Great Recession. CCRI fared better than other community colleges in New England and nationwide, as the slide in front of you indicates. While CCRI remains affordable and is assembling the right supports to ensure every student can be successful, it is hard to think about college when you've lost your job, are working multiple jobs, a family member has lost a job or is sick. For so many of our students, this is the reality today. So now to the year ahead. Our focus will be on 4 areas: investing in student supports, advancing our DEI work, using data to assess our academic offerings, and investing in technology to do our jobs more effectively. So I'll start with investing in student supports. We know the pandemic will continue to put pressure, downward pressure on enrollment and completion rates. To respond, we need to invest in additional student supports to provide our students with the tools and resources they require to achieve success. Some of these include caseload advising. So we rolled out caseload advising, as I've shared with this council, for our new students this semester. And we will continue to expand that program until all students are assigned an advisor from the moment they enter our college or until they transfer or graduate. Currently, each advisor is assigned approximately 200 students who entered CCRI for the first time in the fall, in addition to then collectively serving our existing current students. We know that a first-time student matched with a professional advisor from day one will help our students navigate their first year in college and stay on track in their programs. This model will enhance the capacity for our professional advisors to provide wraparound advising services and keep them on track with their education. To accomplish this goal, we must place a priority on filling the vacant positions in student services, particularly our advisors. In addition to caseload advising, we are committed to expanding faculty use of the early intervention platform Starfish and reimagining how we deliver career services to our students with the opening of the new Career Innovation Lab. Funding by the Champlin Foundation and an anonymous donor, this new space will be a place where our students can meet with career service advisors, connect with employers for internships and jobs, and receive a virtual reality experience to help visualize how their studies can translate into a high impact career. Our second priority is advancing our DEI work. As a place of learning, CCRI has a responsibility to our students and our colleagues of color to ensure we work to becoming a truly diverse, equitable, and inclusive community. It is with this intention that the DEI group, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Employee Group, was created in 2018. Earlier this year, that group released our campus inclusion plan, which guides us in achieving a more inclusive and diverse community. In this coming year, our goal is to deepen the understanding across the college of why this work matters. In addition, we remain focused on diversifying our faculty, staff, and administration. And so as we've discussed before, why does that matter? Over the past decade, our student population has changed. This fall, 40% of our students identified as underrepresented as compared to 23.5% 10 years ago. We know that students of color do better in school when they learn from educators who look like them. Studies show that students learning in a diverse environment achieve better test scores, concentrate more effectively in class, and set higher goals when there are people of similar backgrounds and experiences leading the class. Leading this work for the college is our Director of Human Resources and Institutional Equity, Sybil Bailey, in partnership with Tracy Brown, our new Associate Director in Human Resources. A graduate of Harvard Law School, Tracy brings more than 25 years of human resources experience to this work, and she joined the college early this year. I am grateful for Sybil and Tracy's leadership and confidence that their focus on making our college more inclusive and anti-racist will lead to action. Our third priority is assessing our academic offerings through data analysis to improve student outcomes and institutional effectiveness. This is a bright spot for our college. We're using data-driven, actionable evidence to understand how to close equity gaps, improve student success, and support institutional effectiveness. Our faculty lie at the center of this work with support from our institutional effectiveness team, the administration, and student affairs. And I want to thank all of them for embracing these new tools to deliver high quality instruction to our students. We are capturing and analyzing data through an equity lens, looking at retention, enrollment, completion rates, instructional capacity, and departmental resources to modernize the college's program review process and direct resources and support the growth of promising programs. I welcome the opportunity to come back to this council to give an in-depth presentation on this work and outline how it will drive future decisions for the college. Fourth, investing in technology and systems that will allow us to do our work more efficiently and effectively. We have made tremendous progress this year in rolling out a new chart of accounts to support our decision-making by providing improved visibility in our financial reporting and added efficiency in our business processes. This coming year, we need to update our IT infrastructure to enhance technology to support student and business communications and move our administrative functions to a shared service model. We also need to significantly invest in classroom tools and technology, including equipment to expand our high-flex classrooms to offer our faculty and students greater options to ensure a high-quality learning and engagement experience. So with those priorities outlined for the next year, I'd now like to turn to our FY22 budget request. I'd like to begin by providing some historical context describing the shift in CCRI's funding. Over the past 20 years, the sources of funding for our college and virtually all public colleges and institutions nationwide has changed from a heavy reliance on state appropriations to much greater dependence on tuition revenues. In 2000, Rhode Island state appropriations accounted for 64% of CCRI's overall budget, as compared to 43% last year. Conversely, reliance on tuition has increased during that same period from 33% to 52%. This trend accelerated at an even greater speed since the 2008 recession. And despite the economic rebound, tuition continues to increase as a percentage of our total revenue. As an open access institution, we must remain affordable, and therefore a significant jump in tuition is not an option we are looking to advance. Therefore, the state's investment in CCRI remains critically important, and it is this lens through which we developed our budget request. A budget that is based on the costs required to run an institution that serves the needs of our entire student body, accounting for the services and instruction each student requires, and focusing on providing strong teaching, strong advising, and strong student support. Our total unrestricted operating budget request for FY22 is $116.4 million, and that represents an increase of $1 million over the FY20 enacted budget. This request includes $55.5 million in tuition and fees, which represents an $800,000 or 1.4 decrease from FY20. This decrease reflects a decline in enrollment by 543 full-time equivalent students. This is a conservative number, but one we believe reflects the anticipated continued pressure, downward pressure on our enrollment due to the pandemic. And what I would say there very simply is we do not believe that this is a one-year recovery for the Community College of Rhode Island as it relates to enrollment. What we know is the greatest lever we have for enrollment is retaining the students we already have. So we began this fall at 7% down. And secondarily, how do we then enroll our new students when we look at what is happening with FAFSAs across the state? And in particular, when we look at FAFSA completion in the high school space, those are down significantly. So again, we are predicting an enrollment that reflects a decline in enrollment by 543 full-time equivalent students, and will work very, very hard to attract and retain a strong entering class. In addition to tuition and fees, as you will see, we have requested $54.4 million in state appropriation. That represents a $2.4 million or 4.7% increase over FY20. $5 million in revenues from workforce partnerships and other revenues, and the remaining $1.5 million is debt service. So if I move now to an outline of our tuition and fees. In line with the guidance provided by this council, we are asking for a 2.5% increase in tuition and fee rates, bringing our annual cost for full-time students to $4,980, representing an increase of $120. This breaks down as follows. The 2.5% increase in tuition will bring an annual increase of $110 and a $10 increase in our technology fee, representing a 2.3% increase. This increase is directly in line with the most recent HEPI index, with which Chairman Del Giudice referenced in his opening remarks. It keeps CCRI's tuition well below the Pell level of $6,345 and maintains CCRI's position in terms of tuition and fees as the third lowest in New England, and that assumes the two systems that are below us not rising above us in FY22. Now to our state appropriation request. This year, we are seeking $2.4 million to support our current service level, representing, as I said a moment ago, a 4.7% increase over FY20. This anticipates increases in operating needs, including 75% of that 2.4 million is determined by our contractual obligations. So that is the $1.8 million in COLAs and fringe benefit rate increases. $400,000 in increases to student aid related costs, and that is tied directly to the tuition increase, assuming we're successful with that request. And then an additional $200,000 in insurance premium increases for things like property, casualty, liability, cyber, and so on. So again, it brings to a total of $2.4 million to meet the college's current service level expenses for FY22. So now to the constrained budget that the State Office of Budget and Management directed state agencies to submit. The pandemic and the resulting economic crisis have created significant financial challenges for the college. And our approach to this crisis will continue to be focused upon preserving the institutional health of the college while causing the least possible harm to our community. The constrained budget target issued by the state OMB would require CCRI to reduce its base budget for state dollars by $7.5 million. That reduction, combined with the $1 million reduction in anticipated tuition and fee revenue reduction due to depressed enrollment, would require CCRI to find $8.5 million in new cost savings. Our strategy for the FY22 constrained budget reduction is guided by the following core principles. First, preserving filled positions to the greatest extent possible. Second, ensuring direct instruction is supported. Third, preserving funding critical to student success. And fourth, safeguarding mission critical initiatives. To identify $8.5 million in savings, we would be required to identify $4 million in full-time workforce savings, $2 million in part-time position eliminations, $1.5 million in operating expense reductions, and a final $1 million in course consolidations, reductions in overload, and adjunct costs. A budget reduction of this magnitude would undoubtedly have a direct negative impact on our academic programs, employees, campuses, and students. And we urge the council and the state to do all you can do to protect CCRI. Taking a look at the budget for Rhode Island Promise, in which funding is embedded in the OPC's budget and flows through to the college. Based on the growth rates of Promise programs in other states, we anticipate enrollment will flatten in future years with an overall cohort size between 2,300 and 2,600 new students and a state-funded student count of approximately 1,600 students annually across both cohorts. We do expect next year's cohort size to increase slightly over this year's 2,271 students, with that growth coming from Pell-funded students, the same group that experienced an enrollment decline this year due to the pandemic. We know Rhode Island Promise is the right policy for our state, our students, and our economy. For a relatively small investment, the program is delivering outstanding results with dramatic increases in the number of Rhode Islanders enrolling in and completing college. It shows our students can succeed. It is a policy worth sticking with, and it has been transformational for our college and transformative for our state. I'll finish with our capital improvement plan. As you recall, CCRI's portion of the $117 million higher education bond proposed by the governor is $12 million. Specifically, $7 million of the bond will allow us to transform the Student Services Division from disjointed space to a one-stop shop that is welcoming, easy to navigate, enhances privacy when needed, and increases accessibility. The remaining $5 million from the bond will also help us continue to transform our science labs and classrooms so that our faculty are no longer teaching in worn out spaces and our classrooms have high quality technological teaching tools, such as smart boards that enable access to web-based curriculum. We know that quality academic spaces and student support spaces matter. When students learn in high quality facilities, their outcomes improve. And we know that it also contributes to job satisfaction for our faculty and our staff. Should the General Assembly pass the bond measures, either as part of the FY21 budget or as a standalone bill, it will then go before the voters in a special election. We look forward to working closely with URI, Rick, and this council on the successful passage of the bond. Looking at our FY22 Rycap funding request, we are seeking $18.1 million for previously approved projects that align with priorities outlined in our master facilities plan, including deferred maintenance of our campuses, investment in our power grid to support a fully wireless campus, and continued improvements to the Knight and Flanagan campuses. Before taking your questions, I want to again thank the council for its continued support of our budget proposals. We're encouraged by the outcomes our students are achieving, the work we are doing at CCRI, and we are poised to achieve even more. To do so will require sound financial support. We appreciate so much the commitment of this council, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, President Hughes. Just as I'm looking at my own notes, I want to make sure I captured notes correctly. So Pell right now is 6,345, and your proposed tuition increase with the proposed increase will be how much again? Is it? I want to make
Right,
sure.
so a 2.5% increase would be $110 net increase for our students annually.
And that will bring us to 4,414. Is that correct?
I'm not staring at the slide, so if there's someone on the call that can jump in.
Bring the slide back or?
It's 4,980, Chairman.
4,980. Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And, great. Questions for President Hughes? Okay. Never mind. Senator Izzo.
Yeah, it's a question for President Hughes, but it goes back to, and it's more generalized, actually. So the college and the community college, they're basing the budget request on the 20 budget.
Correct.
So, Tim, you mentioned that we would be enacting this budget this evening. It would then go through a process and we might have to revisit it. Have they established a process that allows for that? So we know, for example, once they finish the 2021 budget, right? Will our people do an analysis of the impact that has, positive or negative, upon what our request is? If the feds add additional dollars, how will that unwind and proceed? I'm just curious.
So there's a little bit of that's a little bit what I refer to as the known unknowns. We're not quite sure what they're going to do, and we're not quite sure what that impact will be. I'm sure the professionals at the community college and Rhode Island College will get to work with our staff at OPC and with OMB and try to understand those impacts. Whether they're dramatic enough to warrant us to come back to the table and adjust our state revenue number, I don't know. Also, we should recognize that both the governor and the General Assembly reserve the right to adjust our general revenue number at their turn at bat with our budget. So whether it's necessary for us to take action or that action would happen later in the pipeline, I'm not sure. But we felt it responsible for us to have our budget hearings on time, on track, even though we have these known unknowns out there. I don't know if that answers your question or not. But.
It just strikes me as leaving us very vulnerable, and I'm sure everyone sort of agrees with that. I'm not sure what our reaction should be, but in any event, but you answered as complete as you can. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for President Hughes? Great, thank you, Madam President. And now we'll turn to Rhode Island College and President Sanchez.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me bring this up here. Gosh, we have some great job, President Hughes. We have some modernizing of our slides to do at Rhode Island College. Great slideshow there. Great content, great presentation. Let me bring this up here. I also, certainly want to thank Chairman Judas and all the council members for particularly this past calendar year for your support, your advocacy, and frankly, your availability. This was and continues to be a very, very challenging year at the college, and I appreciate your leadership and again, your support, and now more than ever, your advocacy as we get to the other side of this. What I thought I'd do before we talk about our 21 revised budget, as well as our 22 budget, what I thought I would do is just share with you some highlights of our success and sustainability efforts that are really transforming how we have been doing business at the college and really have been building momentum at the institution. As many of you know, for a good decade and a half, the college had seen declining enrollments. We have done a tremendous job transforming and modernizing our admissions office, how we recruit, how we do outreach, our strategy in enrollment management. We hired a new Dean of Enrollment Management, Jim Tweed, from the private sector. And in year one, after using data much differently, better technology, and frankly, better practices. In his first year, we saw a 12% increase in our first year enrollments. I believe once we get to the other side of COVID-19, I think we're going to continue to see improvement on our new student recruitment strategies. Similarly, the college has over the years struggled in terms of four-year graduation rates. We continue to be on par for 5- and 6-year graduation rates with our national peers, but we've struggled with our 4-year. I'm happy to share with you, we're now making progress in the positive direction. In fact, the latest data that says 5%, we're seeing over a 6% increase in 4-year graduation rates just over the last couple of years, in large part because of our advising efforts, our early registration. We've addressed serious hold concerns that impact a number of our students, as well as added academic support services. But we're happy to see that we're moving this trend in the positive direction. Fundraising has just taken off at the college. We've essentially doubled our annual fundraising at the college in the last 3 to 4 years. We're averaging annually about $3 million. In fact, I'll share with you tonight, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be announcing the second largest gift in the history of Rhode Island College. We're very excited. An alum, a former Fortune 500 executive, is going to be giving a major or significant life gift to the college. Both him and his wife were both alum at Rhode Island College, but we're very excited of this gift that will be coming to the college. Again, we'll be announcing it here in the next couple of weeks. And of course, we've talked quite a bit over the last few meetings about our new branding and marketing campaign, as well as the revamping of our entire website, which will occur this coming spring. So we're prepared for next fall. But all of these efforts are not only providing kind of a more sustainable institution, but frankly, it's setting the stage for growth at Rhode Island College. And I wanted to just share a few of those points, which leads us to, most higher education institutions across the country are having to adapt or having to adjust because of COVID-19. All of us are asking ourselves, how do we have to change? In some cases pivot, whether because of fewer finances or simply the new environment of online instruction. At Rhode Island College, we certainly have asked ourselves, how do we strengthen our position to provide that high quality, high value education to all Rhode Islanders? And the proposal we're submitting and have agreed upon, working closely with our faculty and our administration, is we're proposing this broad compact with Rhode Islanders. And the main goal there is that we want to significantly, dramatically increase the number of career-ready graduates for Rhode Island's economy. And as we all know, this is more important than ever as Rhode Island is going to prepare this recovery from the devastating impact of COVID on the economy. The way we're going to do that at Rhode Island College is in 3 areas. And this is going to help shape our future and the reason why this budget cycle is particularly important for new investments at the college. The first area is we have to do a comprehensive academic program review to support growth and success at the college. Under the leadership of Helen Tate, our new provost, she has really jumped on campus, working closely with the faculty. This program review will not only look at the quality of our academic programs, but it's going to look at the financial stability of our academic programs, the marketability, and the ability for the academic programs to advance our enrollment goals. But she's already working again with our academic leadership and preparing that criteria. But I have said before, we can no longer be everything to everyone. And this program review is going to help us identify those areas that we need to invest in going forward. The second area as part of this compact is we have to remove barriers for Rhode Islanders to get that high quality 4-year degree. We're going to continue to invest in the traditional delivery on campus to that 18, 19, 20, and 21-year-old. But we also have to grow better access points through evening, weekend, and online programs. Right now at Rhode Island College, we do not have one undergraduate program that is available completely evening, weekend, or online. We think we can be incredibly competitive with all the four-year, both public and private across the state, in the region, and as well as the region, if we began to grow our evening, weekend, and online offerings, where this is an area that without question is going to help us, again, not only be able to sustain the institution going forward, but allow us to have some growth in our enrollments going forward. So new, flexible, accessible enrollment options. The third area that we're committed to is ensuring that we continue to be a first choice in college access and affordability. And even with modest tuition increases, we believe we can have the highest value and return on investment for Rhode Islanders. I would argue that right now, when it comes to geographic accessibility, we are the only, for most Rhode Islanders, the only four-year public colleges that is accessible day in and day out for Rhode Islanders. Financially, I would argue we're the most accessible to most Rhode Islanders because of our tuition price point. And so we're going to continue to be committed to that as part of this compact. Let me jump in now. I'm going to jump in right into the revised 21 budget. This, as you know, we took a hit in our revenues this past year. We saw a 6% decline in our enrollments. That translates to about a $6.1 million less in tuition and fees. From an enrollment side, that's roughly a difference between this year and last year, about 472 students. In addition to that decline of the 6.1 million, the 2021 state appropriation as currently funded is at $47.8 million. This is $9 million less than what this council approved at $56.8 million, and it's $4.3 million less than what the governor's FY21 budget approved of $52.1 million. And so we had some work to do in revising our budget and frankly, reducing our budget. In total, we reduced expenditures approximately $18 million versus the FY21 budget that this council approved. We were able to get there through a number of ways. One, working closely with our unions. We reduced or found savings of about $1.1 million by deferring 2.5% of our cost of living adjustment for our faculty and our non-union staff for this next year. We had to cancel and are delaying a number of new strategic initiatives at the college to the tune of about $3 million. Those initiatives include new technology, improvements, enhancements, student aid, as well as marketing and advertising, all of which are critical to the college right now. But again, it just was a very difficult year, and we had to make some cuts in those areas. The largest area where we had to find savings was across really all of our administrative areas. I shared with this body, we went through exercises of 10 and 20% cuts. On average, we saw about a 15% cut to our operating budgets. For us in administration, that was about $13.8 million that we saw. Just to give you a sense of how that played out from real dollars and the impact on layoffs and vacancies at the college, you can see there that in academic affairs, clearly our largest operating budget, we cut $7.1 million. And over the course of 19 and 20 have continued vacancy holds on faculty, 77 positions in academic affairs. We cut about $3.1 million in administration and finance, and are holding or have laid off about 32 positions. Student success, $1.2 million cut, and about 9 positions and so on and so forth. In total, to revise our budget, we had to cut about $13 million in our operating. And right now that translates to about 128 positions that are continued vacancies as well as new layoffs. That's 20% of our entire FTE at the college. So clearly a very challenging time. Let me move on to then the 22 budget and what we're looking at in terms of expenditures. And again, you see a number of mandatory expenses, 6.5 million in fixed costs, contracts and commitments. Of course, one of the major commitments is our support of our faculty in the RIC AFT contract compensation adjustment of 4.1 million. We're looking at replacing the COLAs for our unions at 1.6 million. And then of course the fringe benefits as well would be another $750,000. We're looking at launching an early retirement program as part of this, the 22 budget as well. We believe we will realize a number of savings. In year one, you can see there, it'd be about 1.25 million in savings. The following year, we would anticipate those savings jumping up to about $2 million. We're also wanting to make investments, as I mentioned earlier, as part of our compact to grow the number of online, evening, and weekend, and not just to be clear, not just course offerings. We want to provide entire programs that Rhode Islanders can have access to at the college, and we're looking at about 2.25 million investment in that area. And then finally, about 2.4 million to restore some of the cuts I laid out in the 21 divisional reductions that were identified as temporary. And a lot of the temporary was due to the remote instruction environment that we had this past year. To give you a sense of what that looks like here from a personnel side, operating utilities, student aid and debt service, clearly the biggest investment is in the personnel of about $8.5 million. Again, these are the contractual commitments as well as addressing some of the temporary cuts that we had. Just to give you a sense of a position or two, you know, we had to cut, for example, our lab coordinators. Because we were predominantly remote, we just didn't need them. Once we go back to in-person instruction, which is looking more favorably this next fall, once the vaccine is broadly distributed, we're going to have to hire a lot of those positions that we did not fund due to our remote instruction this past year. You can see they're operating about $2.3 million increase. In total, the request is about $11.6 million. So then that raises the question in terms of how do we get there from the revenue side? And this is our 2022 budget request for your consideration at this time. We're looking at requesting about $5.9 million over the governor's 2021 budget. What goes into this 5.9 million is 4.2 million, approximately an 8% increase to our base budget to cover some of those fixed costs and the new investments, and a 1.75 million to fund a proposed early retirement program. This would also require an increase in tuition of 5% to generate about a net, it would net us about 1.3 million. I've talked to Chairman Daljudas about the original request and guidance of the 2.5% tuition increase. We agreed that it'd be worthwhile to have a conversation and make a case about as to why the college feels like it needs a 5% increase. We believe, you know, with about $442 per student increase, we do not believe it's going to impact our enrollments. As you may recall, when we had a 7.5% increase in tuition a year ago, we still saw a 12% increase in our enrollments. Even for our lowest income students, our Pell eligible students, they are today at Rhode Island College with this 5% increase on an annual basis, they're still looking at $2,200 for a 4-year college degree for year one, $8,800 for an entire 4-year college degree. The truth of the matter is that students and families, they're still doing their research and they still see Rhode Island College as among their top choices when it comes to affordability. The 5% increase in tuition would generate about $3.2 million. The net, however, again, is only about 1.9 or 1.3 because we're anticipating a decline in enrollments in part because we'll still be recovering from COVID. Additionally, we're looking at about a 2.6 million that will be available now at our disposal because we will no longer be subsidizing Henry Barnard. And so that will go to the plus this coming year for the 2022 budget. And just to give you a sense real quickly on the tuition front, you can see there we continue to be among the lowest of all of our peers. In addition to this, right now on average, we're about 12% below our peers in actual tuition. Our peers also continue to raise their tuition at much more quickly than we have. Over the last 10 years, these peers have increased their tuition about 20%, whereas we've only increased our tuition about 16%. And so we believe, again, that this 5% increase, certainly with where the state is in funding the college, is needed at this time, certainly to support our new initiatives at the college. Here's how it plays out on tuition fees, state appropriation, sales and service and indirect. We're asking about $1.3 million that would be netted in tuition and fees. State appropriation, which again is about an 8% increase, about 5.9 million. The big number that's sticking out there is the 4,400% increase in sales and services. This, of course, is due to not having to transfer to HBS. And so that transfer is going to be in the plus item there. In total, the revenues would be $11.6 million. Very quickly, just to go over the capital improvement plan, the governor is supporting a $117 million bond. We are $38 million of that will be focused in modernizing our Clark Science Building, which houses our laboratories on campus. We plan to work very closely with CCRI and URI to move that forward in a special election, I believe here in February, if not March. Our plan for 22, as we're going to continue to make requests every other year, will be to complete the Fogarty Life Science Building modernization at about, scheduled right now at about $60 million. In 24, we would anticipate submitting a bond request to create a one-stop shop student services building, converting at the Henry Barnard School. As many of you know, that is centrally located on campus, essentially on the quad, and it would provide a great service center for our students coming out of their academic buildings and being able to access advising, disability services, veteran student services, or financial aid assistance. And then in addition to that, we'd be looking at modernizing Whipple Hall and addressing our steam plant modernization, both for the 24 bond request, and then there in 26, we would anticipate moving forward with the Adams Library and additional academic support services for our students. That, I believe, concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions on our request.
Thank you, President Sanchez.
Thank you.
I could go back. It might be easier if you keep your slides up.
Sure.
I think it was just a couple slides back one more where you, one more right here. So this is, nope, go back. Right here. So if we're talking dollars and not percentages, so we're looking for an increased, let's say $6 million in revenue. And we're looking at 1.3 million in tuition are the dollars that you're actually looking at. So like $7.3 million. Am I reading that right?
Yes, well then, yes,
And then
from
you have-
state appropriation, 5.9 million and then 1.3 from tuition.
Right, so a total of, let's call it we'll call it 7.3 million in new revenue is that you're trying to bring in with this budget, correct?
Right.
And this is built on the assumption that the state budget for FY21 was going to be 47.8 based on your previous slide.
Yes. Would you like, want me to go to the previous slide?
Could you just for a minute? I think it was like slide 4 or 5.
Yep.
Yeah. Right here, yep. So FY21 state appropriation at 47.8. So you're looking for 47.8 plus 7.3. 55.1. Correct?
I believe that's correct here.
Yeah, there's the mathematician. All right. Come to that.
No, if I could, that the
Call a friend here.
calculation is done based off of the governor's revised, the governor's recommended budget. I think for consistency, both CCRI and Rick presented the data based off the governor's recommended, because that's the last set of data that's in play. The numbers you're looking at right now on the screen, the 9 million less than what the council approved, the 56.8, that was our original 2021 budget. What the documents in front of you are prepared off of are assuming a $52.1 million appropriation for 2021. However, right now, we are only being funded at 47.8. So the math works if you use the 52.1 and 8% from that gets you to the 4 and change, plus the line item state appropriation for an early retirement plan.
Chairman Del Duke, this is Robbie, and if slide 11 also shows, if you're looking for the total general revenue appropriation, what we're asking for.
No, I'm looking at what here's what I got in my head. What I'm struggling with is I read the state budget that is before the House Finance Committee tonight. And that budget number for Rhode Island College is 52,172,385. But your slide says it's 47.8. So you've already made your 5 million-ish. We're done. We don't have to raise tuition. We're good. But if they come in at 52,172.
The current budget is only talking about fiscal year 21. That's restoring to the governor's recommended. And if you recall, the governor's recommended only included a current services adjustment of $300,000. It was $4.7 million less than what the budget was built on, because we had $5.7 million of fixed costs related to our contracts. So I don't believe that, it's a step in the right direction if the House is proposing that they fund us at the governor's recommended level. But as you can see from the slides, we have significant fixed costs coming up with our contracts for 22.
Right, I see that. What I'm struggling with though is your presentation that shows me 47.8 as your FY21 number, when it looks like the FY21 number is actually going to be 52.1.
Right, but as of 5 o'clock this afternoon, the college is being funded at 47 and change. So this was prepared off the best information we had at the time.
Gotcha, and that I completely understand and agree with. Which brings me back to my opening statement that there's known unknowns out there right now. And by no means is it a windfall to the college, because I get the devastation and the financial crush going on. But I also get that same financial devastation and crush going on our students and their families, many of whom are out of work while we're sitting there thinking about raising their tuition, whether it be 1%, 2%, or 5%. So I'm just trying to compute all of that while we're having this conversation. I'm going to yield for a minute. I see Mr. Duffy raising his hand.
Yeah, I just had a comment. President Sanchez, I thought you made a compelling case for the 5% increase, and I also very much appreciate the comments of the faculty on that point. But my question to you is, based on Rick's competitive position in the region, are you confident that the 5% increase in tuition would not adversely affect enrollment, either your ability to attract or retain students?
Absolutely. Let me see if I can't go to the slide of our peers. Yeah, you know, we had a real good test run again a year ago when we proposed and approved a 7.5% increase. And I was thankful for the council for, you know, looking at the needs of each institution, because it wasn't across the board. URI, CCRI had a different tuition increase than Rhode Island College. And even that year, we still saw a 12% increase in our freshmen, new freshmen coming to the college. You know, I'm not concerned about losing enrollments, because even with this increase, we're still in the bottom 10% of our peers. And frankly, families look at price point, and particularly now. And I think we're not gonna be impacted by a reduction in enrollments, certainly not from a tuition standpoint.
And what percentage of the students are Pell eligible, and how would that affect them?
So 47% are Pell eligible. Those students, they're still, again, on average, our students will see about a $442 increase. And keep in mind that some of that will be covered by Pell, but it doesn't include additional financial aid that the college would provide or additional scholarships. But for Pell eligible students, their annual tuition to attend Rhode Island College is $2,200 for that for that first year and every year after that. And that's a bargain. You won't find a better price point in the region.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
What is the non-Pell, the full tuition? So I get the 442. What will the full tuition be for a non-Pell student?
The full tuition for a non-Pell?
With the 5% increase.
Yep.
The full rate with no financial aid would be $10,702 for an in-state student.
So I'll do this.
Go ahead, Ms. Green.
Are you, I don't think we've seen it here. Are you with the, you know, with the money that you're attempting to raise here, are you looking at all in proposing investing in student aid in addition to this? Just to, you know, we're obviously all concerned about the lower income students that will be impacted.
Yes, we've had to, over the last couple of years, cut into our student aid. We are, Rob or Steve, do you have that number right offhand of the increase in aid?
Yes, so the 22 budget request also increases the financial aid budget 5%, which is about $500,000 in additional aid so that our neediest students would not see as much of an impact.
Chair Judas, recognizing the timing difference between when this was presented and what we believe to be the case in the budget tonight, what's the sequencing of this? I know we're supposed to vote on this evening, I believe. How, again, just point of reference from my knowledge.
So sequencing right now, if everything stays the way the calendar is set at this moment, we would approve the budget tonight, which would set tuition and the general revenue request. Tomorrow night, the Board of Education will ratify the general revenue request. And Ron, keep me honest here, but the tuition stays at the council level. The Board of Education does not ratify tuition, just the council does tuition. And then it goes to the state, where the governor's office would have the ability to adjust the general revenue number in her proposed budget, release General Assembly, and the General Assembly can adjust the state revenue, but only this council can do tuition. And right now, we're scheduled to do that tonight. And that's the kind of the hot burn I have right now, is that while we're meeting, here we are at 7:09, the House Finance Committee's meeting started at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, and they might be working with different numbers that might change the administration's position on the tuition number. If they were getting more state revenue, maybe they could come down to the 2.5% target on tuition. But if they don't get the state revenue, they're not going to be able to do that. And that's where I feel a little the cart and the horse here. Is what I'm was a little bit of what I'm struggling with here.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add a point of clarification, the budget documents presented in your full package are prepared based off of the FY20 is presented on the governor's recommended budget, which is what's being proposed in front of the House tonight. So all of these scenarios are showing, as when we ran through where we are at to date with 21, is showing, our current funding levels, but the budget documents themselves have been prepared assuming that we are funded at the governor's recommended level. So if in the documents themselves, I know the presentation gets a little challenging because we're all in sort of 2 different years with different funding sources because we don't have an approved 21. But if you look at what we've submitted for a revised 2021, we have assumed and prepared our budget documents showing that it's at the governor's recommended level. Our worst case scenario, which is included as an appendix in the budget documents, outline what would happen if we weren't funded at the governor's recommended level. And we also saw a 50% cut to our state appropriation. That's also in your budget package.
Right, I saw those as well. Chair Cottom?
So if you're funded at what's before the legislature tonight, which is the governor's proposed, the difference between that and the presentation we just saw would be a what, 4 or so difference? Am I getting that right?
Yes. The only difference is oops, little feedback there. The 21 budget is being presented at what is being presented tonight at the House Finance, but the college for 21 is funded at a level that's $4.3 million less than the governor's recommended.
But that could change in 3 days when the House passes.
But our 22 budget was built on the assumption that we received the governor's recommended budget for FY21.
And her recommended budget was which number?
The 52.2.
Right.
So if that's not what is approved tonight, we have to go back because 21 will be in worse shape than what we are. What this will do is help us preserve the rest of 21 and set a stage that we can achieve what we need to achieve in 22 as we've laid out. So if the budget comes out lower than the governor's recommended, then we have a larger hurdle to jump over in terms of preparing for 22.
So Steve, can I restate it from my sort of simple brain here? So if the 52.2 does not get approved tonight and it reverts back to the 47 that you've indicated in your this particular budget, this particular presentation,
yes,
the delta will actually be greater.
Yes, it will be
22 than what you're saying. By any estimate, by how much?
4.5. Rob, what is it? 12, $13 million? Because right now, we're being funded $9 million less than what our original 21 budget was built on. So it's an enormous, that's why the 15% targets were given to us by OMB to ensure that the 3 schools had the same methodology. But it would be a very large gap if we were left funded at the 47. So not only would it be for 47, if our state appropriation is reset at that lower level, assuming that our fixed costs then aren't covered, and the college has $6+ million in new fixed costs just related to our personnel, we're talking an almost insurmountable hurdle to overcome.
I think, Marianne, I think your question and Steve's response helped me understand. So at 52.1, that's where you based, so everything you based here tonight is the 52.1 plus what you're asking for. If they reduce you to 50, you're going down 2 million, and you're going to come back to us looking for another $2 million. You're
We'll either have
getting that 52.1 now.
Right, and to Senator Izzo's lingering question, you know, this is typically the exercise that 3 schools have to go through once the governor's budget is submitted, because our requests tend to not equal what the governor's budget is, and the schools are left to figure out where they're going to find the savings in the expense. Or the council goes back and does sort of, not the right term, but an off-cycle approval of a tuition increase.
Understood. Chair Cottle.
The year you're operating in at that reduced number, already assumed and made the cuts to balance that year, correct?
As of today, yes.
As of today, yes.
We're assuming the funding is at 47 and change. However, what we also are working through now in conjunction with the state and the Department of Health is the spring mitigation costs that we'll be faced with now that the CARES money has run its course on this 12/30. So any cushion or contingency would help us ensure that we have the funds necessary to cover our mitigation expenses for the spring. Because everybody's CARES money is expired at that point.
Ms. Green.
I have 2 questions. First of all, I think, President Sanchez, that you said that when you did the 5% or the 7% increase recently, you didn't see a big impact on enrollment rates then. I'd like to just know again those numbers. And then do we know, I know URI has also increased its tuition from time to time when we've been on the council. Do we know what impact that has had on enrollment numbers? You know, I guess that's my question. And then also, if there is additional stimulus money coming, and I know that's, who knows if that's coming, but what happens procedurally with that? Do we then adjust everything, or does it just go through and it's the institutions are, will use it in the best ways they can?
I'll answer the second question and let the president answer the first question. The way things when this round, the institutions received 2 pots of money, one for direct pass through to our students and the other for institutional mitigation costs. As the council knows, the 3 schools had that equivalent amount scooped out of their state appropriation. What the college did in response is we drew down those funds to offset the cost of mitigation and to make up some ground for that. But those funds that are issued directly to the school were ours to direct within the confines of the CARES Act. Any aid that we get from the governor's or the state's CARES or money is in conjunction with them. There's a slightly different set of rules, but they're the ones that are proving whether or not we would get dispersed any of that. So it depends on how any further stimulus is structured, whether there's a component that goes directly to the school or if it goes to the state. And then I'll let the president talk about you're muted, sir.
Gotta come off mute, Frank. Frank, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. The year we increased tuition 7.5%, we saw in terms of new student freshman class, we saw let me just think here what my numbers were saying. We saw a 12% increase in our freshman class with a 7.5% increase in tuition. And so it did not, we didn't see a decline in a freshman class attracting new students coming to campus.
Senator Rizzo.
Yeah, I think the conversation is kind of interesting. One of the things I think is that I think what the college has done in terms of building this budget is the right thing to do. With the number of unknowns that everyone is agreeing exists for the moment, I think that if they had built it on what they were actually receiving in 2021, we would look at numbers that would be much higher in order for them to remain viable. And in some ways, we've got to give this thought in terms of the state. It's permeating everything right down to the cities and towns. For example, Cranston, my own city, is suing the governor by virtue of the fact that they're claiming that the money that's actually coming in is less than which was recommended appropriations, so that they froze them back to like 20. So there's just so many unknowns. I think that this was a judicious approach. And I think that had they not done this, the requests would have looked even more dire in terms of the amounts of money that would be needed. I think it's the right way to go. And I think that we just have to continually to monitor closely and to exercise whatever authorities we have with regards to changes that are made in the budget, even what the House is doing this evening, what they might do in another 2 weeks. We don't know what the supplemental is going to look like. I mean, they haven't even finished the 21. People are going to go in for a supplemental. I don't know how they're going to handle that in January and February. That's going to be a very interesting thing to watch. But I think that this was a valid and an appropriate approach.
Thank you, Senator Rizzo. And I have a better understanding and better feel for where we are than when we started, which is the purpose of the discussion. So while nobody again is coming to the meeting saying, oh boy, I have an opportunity to raise tuition, I see and understand the necessary burden on the college and understand how you get to the 5%. I'm hopeful that the state revenue will be, state appropriation will be higher. I'm hopeful that there'll be a COVID relief. I'm hopeful there's a lot of things that will happen, but we have to deal with the realities that are in front of us at this moment. And I understand how you get to where you are. So we'll move that forward at that point. Any other questions for President Sanchez or his team on the proposed budget? All right, batting cleanup in the office is Acting Commissioner Ron Cavallaro with the OPC budget. Over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to present this budget for the Office of the Post-Secondary Commissioner. As Chair Judas indicated, I am presenting this budget in my role as the acting commissioner. Fortunately, accompanying me tonight is Chief Financial Officer Susan Manzolillo, who is here in case there are any technical or financial questions regarding my presentation. As everyone has noted, the effect of the COVID pandemic and the response to it has had significant impact throughout all of higher ed, including the office. The challenges presented from working and learning from home, from the cancellation of workforce development training and courses at our centers, the limitation on our abilities to meet objectives set prior to the pandemic, and the concern about the health and safety of our staff, our students, and our families cannot be overstated. But I must say, in spite of this, the office staff has stood up, has adapted, and they are continuing to do the work that's assigned to them. As the council knows, the office has some specific statutory duties, and as the administrative office for the council, we supervise the Workforce Development Center in Westerly. We will supervise the new planned center in Woonsocket, both of which will be essential for providing post-secondary certificates and credentials necessary for the highly skilled workforce in the state. But by way of, we also have the Supervised the Nursing Center, which throughout the summer, the staff at the Nursing Center working with the nursing staffs at the Rhode Island College and the university got together and they started planning for this semester to basically run the center as needed in conformance with the requirements to deal with the COVID pandemic. And it's a fine center, and it allows both Rick and URI to provide state-of-the-art nursing programs, which is, as we can see now, is much needed for the state. The next slide, please. And a little bit of background. Susan, thank you. A little bit of background. In fiscal year 2020, the office was required to achieve some efficiencies. And it met those efficiencies and it achieved an additional $500,000 in temporary savings. If you remember, we purposely left some temporary savings to position the office for an anticipated newcoming commissioner and the roles that he or she envisioned for the office going forward. However, during the fiscal 21 budget cycle, the office was level funded, but at the fiscal year end 2020 actual level. So where they thought they were level funding us, there's actually a $500,000 loss because they level funded us including the $500,000 temporary savings that we had found. We identified this issue with the administration, and we went through the process of justifying the need for these additional funds. However, then COVID hit, and basically all bets were off in that regard. And the $500,000 has never been corrected, and it's something that the office was forced to adapt as it went forward. As you all have heard me say time and time again, every day the office works to do more with less staff and less funding. In fiscal year 2022, our operating budget shows an incremental increase until we can restore the funding to what is the necessary levels. You should also know that over the past few years, the office has raised in excess of $900,000 in grant funding that currently funds 3 full-time FTEs at the office. Without this grant funding, and with the cuts from recent years, would have been much more destabilizing to the office. Next slide, please. I know you are familiar with the statutory duties of the office. We listed them here. I'm not going to read them, but they are in this slide for later reference if you need them. There is also, you won't see it in there because it's done by way of a citation, but there is also the role granted to the or given to the office to oversee the proprietary schools in the state, which is a big chunk of what the office is required to do on a weekly basis. Next slide. Here we highlight some of the initiatives we are engaged in addition to the statutory duties that are set out. We continue to contribute to the success of the students and the institutions with initiatives such as these. Education and workforce development, one example of those activities is our management of the Lumina Foundation grant to help adults overcome barriers in their attainment goals. This year we launched the Rhode Island Reconnect portal and have engaged over 200 adults who are looking to enter or re-enter higher education or who seek workforce training. For veterans, and those who have accessed the benefits of the GI Bill, they're important to the state's attainment goals, and our office works with all post-secondary institutions, public and private, across the state to promote increased access for veterans and other military affiliated students. And we also ensure program quality and the appropriate use of funds. That even applies to some of the privates and the proprietaries. We have assisted over 600 adults and counting to secure wraparound supports crucial to ensuring persistence and completion of job-related education opportunities. And that's part of the Rhode Island Back to Work initiative. The office, we promote early college opportunities for high school students through our management of the dual and concurrent enrollment fund. And we are working closely with the institutions to increase and enhance dual enrollment offerings and to assist our colleagues at Rhode in promoting the All College Network and Enroll RI platform. This year, we also partnered with the Department of Corrections, and we're reviewing challenges and opportunities for promoting educational access among justice-involved populations, which I believe is a term of art. And finally, working with the governor's office and other agencies, we will be defining and promoting credentials of value with those agencies and with employers to better understand the value of industry credentials and to make sure we are producing high value credentials that align to high wage, high growth industries. Next slide. The fiscal year 2022 budget for the Office of the Post-Secondary Commissioner is approximately $40 million. Included in this budget is $2 million for the completion of the Northern Rhode Island Education Center. This is the summary of the general revenue budget request. The general revenue request consists of operating, which is 1.7 million, and non-operating, which is 14 million. If you remember from previous years' presentations, the office only controls the 1.7 million operating portion of the general revenue budget. The remainder of the general revenue budget, which is labeled here non-operating, is comprised of pass-through funds. Here including the Nursing Education Center, which is approximately 2.6 million, Rhode Island Promise, which is 7 million, the Children's Crusade Endowment, which is 3.5 million, and the Shepherd's operating and parking, which is 1.4 million. On the summary of non-general revenue, the 8.1 million in federal funds includes the formerly known as RIHEA, it's DIA. It's the Division of Higher Educational Assistance within the office. And it includes those reserves, which is 4 million, Gear Up, and other small federal grants. The other fund category includes DIA funds derived from the College Bound Fund 529 program, and that includes 6 million for the Promise One need-based grants. This slide shows the largest line items in the fiscal 22 budget. And they are all pass-throughs. The Westerly Woonsocket Education and the proposed Woonsocket Education Center are self-supporting through restricted funds, with the exception of lease funding for Northern Rhode Island, which is from general revenue. And the Nursing Education Center, as you know, is supported by the two institutions. That is the OPC budget presentation. If there are any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. And we're going to continue to work with the administration, the General Assembly. They understand what happened between the 2019 actual and the FY20 proposed budget. There was a lot of goodwill to go fix it, but again, COVID happened, and we'll get the attention on that at the appropriate time. Questions for the Commissioner? Senator Rizzo.
It's a question in a sense, but it's also an observation before we get to the actual voting on these proposed budgets. One of the observations I don't make, and I don't think it's unknown to everyone who has been involved in this process over the past year or so. One of the things I think is most interesting is that we heard tonight explanations by CCRI, and we heard explanations by the college and by OPC with regards to needs and justifications. What I think is going to be interesting to watch that plays out is not only how they reconcile the state budget and then the final allocations, but how they make the decision and who makes the decision to balance higher education dollars in the state of Rhode Island. We now have the university, which is separate from us. We don't know, and we're not involved at all in terms of what their requests are and what they're looking for and what their rationale is. Someone's going to evaluate that, and someone's going to make a decision as to how that fares with what we're asking and how we're justifying what we're doing. But we may not be part of that conversation. That may happen in a back room at the State House with the finance committees. It may happen in the Speaker's office. It can happen anywhere. And I think that that's something that we need to keep in mind. We're not going to resolve it. And I certainly have no answers in terms of how to resolve it. But I think as we move forward, especially on an evening like this, where we're looking at finances that are, we're in an extraordinarily difficult situation, that we need to prepare it somewhere down the road. And I don't mean to have a discussion now, but Rhode Island has to grab hold of how they're going to better coordinate higher education and make sound decisions with the resources. For example, I took note because it's a particular pet peeve of mine that OPC, when the acting commissioner mentioned the pass-throughs, the $1 million plus that we pass through when most of the people who use it are URI people. I mean, that is outrageous. And way back when that was all established, we were promised that that wouldn't happen. So there's $1 million plus every year. And I don't even know if that includes the buses that go back and forth that give people rides from the garage, the 3 blocks. But in any event, That's my say. And so I think that that places, I think that puts us into a context when we know we're making decisions tonight. It's the best we can do, but it's in the context of, I think, a situation that really requires some really hard efforts going forward, because it's only going to get worse for folks down the road.
Thank you, Senator. I agree with your observations. Any questions for Commissioner Cavallaro? Great. We'll close the budget portion of our presentations. Thank you to all presenters and all of the supporting staff that were here and participated. We're going to move now to item 7, our action items. And the first on the action items is approval of the council's 2021 meeting schedule, which was presented. May I have a motion that the council approve the 2021 meeting calendar as presented? Motion made by?
Mello.
So moved.
Made by Mello, so seconded by Mr. Duffy. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Stands passed. Thank you. Next is the approval and awarding of faculty tenure at the community college. Again, presented to you in enclosure 7B, along with a list of the faculty names and departments, be effective on January 1st, 2021. So may I have a motion that the Council on Post-Secondary Education approve awarding of tenure as presented at the community college?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Monty, seconded by
Mello.
Mello. Roll call vote for this vote, please. And that chair votes yes. Chair Cottam,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Senator Izzo,
Yes.
Mr. Mello,
Yes.
Ms. Monty,
Yes.
all in the affirmative. Thank you. Next is item 7C, approval of a recommendation from the System Personnel Review Committee. Again, this was in the read-ahead package and affects a role at the Workforce Center in Westerly as we bring the Woonsocket up online and other duties as assigned. There's been a rebalancing of one position. I'll do the motion and then check for discussion. So may I have a motion that the Council on Post-Secondary Education approve the recommendation of the System Personnel Review Committee regarding the upgrade of a position of Coordinator Business Operations at the Westerly Education Center. Motion made by
Mello.
Mr. Mello, seconded by
Izzo.
Ms. Green. There's a motion has been made and seconded. Discussion on the topic. Great. I'll do a roll call vote. Chair, I vote yes. Chair Cottam,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Senator Izzo,
Yes.
Mr. Mello,
Yes.
Ms. Monty,
Yes.
all approved. Thank you. Next is item D. And I've got a long motion for this one to read through. So we're going into the budget approvals. May I have a motion that the Council on Post-Secondary Education approve the public post-secondary education systems operating budget requests for FY22 as presented. That the Council on Post-Secondary Education approve the public post-secondary education systems tuition, mandatory fees, and auxiliary enterprise fees for the FY22 budget as presented, reserving the right to readjust tuition and fees as needed upon notification of the governor's recommendation later upon action of the legislature. That this Council on Post-Secondary Education approve the public post-secondary education systems table of organization for FY22 as presented. And lastly, that the Council on Post-Secondary Education approve the public post-secondary education systems budget allocation for Ron, it says FY21, I believe it's supposed to say FY22.
I believe that's the supplemental part.
Okay, for FY21 is presented. And that completes the entire motion for that portion. We have a motion made by
Izzo.
Mr. Senator Izzo, seconded by Ms. Green. Roll call vote. Chair, I vote aye. Chair Cottam,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Senator Izzo,
Yes.
Mr. Mello,
Yes.
Ms. Monty.
Yes.
All in the affirmative, motion stands passed as presented. Next item is the capital improvement plans. May I have a motion that the Council on Post-Secondary Education approve the post-secondary education systems capital improvement plan for FY '22 through FY '26 and
So
forward it
moved.
to the Board of Education for its approval. The plan will then be submitted to the State Budget Office for review and consideration for inclusion into the governor's recommended budget. Motion made by
So moved.
Mello.
Mello, seconded by Duffy. Roll call vote. As chair, I vote aye. Chair Cottam,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Ms. Green. Ms. Green votes yes on mute, but we see it. Senator Izzo,
Yes.
Mr. Mello,
Yes.
Ms. Monty,
Yes.
all in the affirmative, stands passed. Next, we're going to move to executive session, just for a quick look when we come out. So we're going to go into executive session. I'm going to read the motion in just a moment, but for practicality purposes, this group who are on the screen plus one or two staff members will move to executive session. The webinar will pause. Everybody else will be put into a holding or a waiting room, if you would, while we have the discussion in executive session. When that session is concluded, we'll come back out, and there are two action items on our agenda for when we come back out. One will be to seal the minutes of the discussion that takes place in executive session. And the second will be an action item relative to the motor vehicle safety teachers NEA contract at the community college, just for those who are viewing at home. So we're going to take a motion now that the council will seek into executive session for the following items: discussion regarding potential litigation pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42, 46, 582, and discussion regarding collective bargaining units pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42, 46, 582. Motion made by
Mello.
Mello, seconded by Green. All those in favor to move to executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Stands passed. We're going to take a 5-minute break while the staff breaks the webinar and puts us into the executive session and the public into the waiting room. So we'll reconvene here at 7:50, 7:50. So a 5-minute pause. Move forward. So the council has returned from executive session. May I please have a motion that the council on post-secondary seal the minutes of the executive session held tonight on December 9th. Motion made by Green, seconded by Monty. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? None. Thank you. Additional action item number 9. Approval of the memorandum of understanding with Rhode Island Association of Certified Teachers of Motor Vehicle Safety, NEA, Rhode Island. May I have a motion that the Council on Post-Secondary Education approve a memorandum of understanding with the Rhode Island Association of Certified Teachers of Motor Vehicle Safety, NEA, Rhode Island. Motion made by
Mello.
Mello, seconded by
Green.
Ms. Green. Thank you. We'll do a roll call vote. Chair, I vote yes. Chair Cottam,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Senator Izzo,
Yes.
Mr. Mello,
Yes.
Ms. Monty,
Yes.
all approved. Thank you. Item 10, upcoming meetings. We have a Board of Education meeting tomorrow night, same Zoom channel, where we'll have the Board of Education presentation of the same budgets. Madam Chair, are we also doing the elementary budget tomorrow or just the higher ed budget?
No, it will be both elementary and higher ed. They had a meeting a couple of weeks ago and drew their budget.
Okay, that's all in the read ahead package. And I got several documents today. We'll get digging into that. All right, most important motion of the night, motion to adjourn, made by,
Mello.
Second.
seconded by Green. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We stand adjourned.